We're told to live our most authentic lives. And as soon as we do, we're going to get judged. So today is all about how do we keep sharing all these aspects of ourselves that haven't been accepted and do so from a place of love. Join me. I'm going to be sharing a very personal story of my coming out to my church about being a priestess. So I can't wait for you to hear more.
Welcome to the I'm Perfectly Divine podcast, a place for the strong, sensitive, spiritual seeker to recognize the perfection of your human journey in spiritual worlds through proven and grounded frameworks that support you to live in the wholeness you already are. For over the past 2 decades, I have supported people from all around the world, as well as Fortune 500 companies, to dissolve the divisions within them and live with greater empowerment and love. This podcast is an exploration of the paradoxes that befuddle us as we live our lives being both human and divine. Together, you and I, along with other experts, will navigate integrating psychology and spirituality, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, the darkness and the light, to create greater sacred union from within. I believe through your remembering that you are innately divine, that you will allow yourself to more openly shine. So let's get to it, because your unique light is needed more than ever.
Hello, beautiful souls. I'm so excited to be with you today. Today is all about sharing your truth, sharing the parts of you, especially that haven't been accepted. And today I'm going to get into more about my story about coming out to my church as a priestess so that we can have this story as a guideline of some of the experiences that I think we have as humans. And being human, we want to be seen for who we are. We want to shine the love that we are. And so it's very hurtful when the love that you are isn't fully seen, and especially if it's rejected. And so why do we want to continue to put ourselves out there when you're going to face judgment? And it's not just the risk of being judged. The more of you that you share, that's your authentic self, the more you really will be judged by some. And so we want to hold that part of our human experience and understand why this is also part of the divine path that we go through to remembering the love that we are. So yes, I want you to share the parts of you that haven't been accepted, because that will bring you a sense of living more authentically. And that's the freedom that we all crave. What's underneath that freedom that we're craving, is the freedom to be our expression of love, whatever your specific expression of love is in all its unique nooks and crannies. You want to be seen and celebrated and honored for that. And as we learn to give ourselves that experience, we're also going to be judged, shamed, perhaps humiliated, put down exactly for those same aspects. And so I know for myself, that has made me want to shut down. That's made me want to hide. That's made me want to keep this aspect of myself safe. And that's normal. But there's also this part of the journey that reminds me of the seed that grows into a flower through the crack of the concrete, right? It finds a way, despite all these conditions and surroundings and their environment, that a flower that some might judge as a weed makes its way through, because there is an innate aspect of us and our divinity that is calling for us to grow. And each of us will grow in greater self acceptance as we learn to receive these aspects of ourselves and know what to do when those aspects of ourselves are not received by another, and how to keep going, how to keep allowing ourselves to show and share who we truly are. And the journey through this is really that in the end, this is about honoring the divinity that you are, because you are this unique expression. And the more you can embody that, regardless of what others are going to do with that, the more you are going to feel that expansive love within you. And that's my whole point of doing this podcast, is that you remember, you remember, you remember the love that you are and all aspects of who you are. And so again, there are real risks when we have shared ourselves, maybe our political beliefs, our spiritual beliefs, our sexuality, and our mental health states, that others are going to look at that and frown upon where you're at or how you are living your life. And people are going to judge you. And this is a part of our human journey, so that we learn to grow away from needing others' approval, so that we can get anchored into our own sense of self-love and self-worth. I think so often there's talk about loving yourself and really owning your worth. And it's like, okay, we can do that, yes, through affirmations. But when things get very real, it's when someone's judging us, saying that we're not enough, or ridiculing us, or shaming us for who we are, and that we can still remember our truth. That is the power of not just self-love and worthiness, but also compassion. So when we are led into our deeper knowing of our divine nature, this is how we honor the divine. At least that's my belief, is that we honor the divine as we honor each of our own unique expressions of the divine within us. And that's why we're all different. We're not meant to be the same, because we're meant to learn from one another and learn more about the different expressions of the divine through one another. So when we are being called to share more of ourselves, it's usually this gradual process. First and foremost, you need to come out to yourself, right? Like, you may have an identity that maybe was put upon you, or just a way of how you thought about life and yourself, that you are starting to question. And then you come to the realization, whoa, whatever that identity was about myself, I'm breaking away from that. That does not hold true for me anymore. And just that place of being able to honor this within you, it takes so much courage. You're willing to question things according to your truth. And that is coming from your connection to the divine. Now, this is true, I think, whether you believe in the divine at all or not. Now, you listening to the podcast, you probably do. But I feel that people that even are atheists, that don't believe in God, they may use the words love, but it's a call of greater love to be true to yourself, right? So you come to terms with yourself. What was an identity you were given? And you are recognizing, yeah, that's not me. And the discomfort that you have to go through to really claim that for yourself, to get clear with yourself, is powerful in and of itself. And then the next stage is, you're likely going to want to share this with someone that you deeply trust. And hopefully your experience with that person who who you deeply trust and loves you unconditionally is a positive one, because if they love you unconditionally, then they're going to reflect that back to you. They're going to see and honor you. This doesn't mean, by the way, that they're going to exactly see things how you do, but they will honor that this is your experience, your interpretation that's important to you, that has meaning to you, that gives you meaning as well. So we go from ourself to sharing it with an intimate partner or relationship, someone that we're emotionally connected to, that we feel loved for who we are. And then where things start to get trickier is when we share it with friends and family. And especially the longer someone has known you, and with family, it can be that they have this sense of that it's their job to take care of you. And with that, they want what's best for you. They want what they think is going to support you to live a good life. And so this is where you can come out sharing who you are, aspects of yourself, and they disagree. And the shame and the shaming will come forward. And so this can be a huge growth period of how to begin to navigate that. And I'm going to share more about that's why I want to share my journey, is so that I can share more details around navigating this. And then after we generally find peace with family and friends, it's sharing ourselves with the larger community. And again, you'll still be judged. And so each of these steps are gearing us up from our own judgments to being afraid we won't be as loved by the ones who we consider hold us in love the most, or at least can be a neutral space for us, to sharing with family and friends who might hold you back to an old identity and say that's not you, or that's not good for you, or what have you, to then sharing with the larger community and the whole vastness of different opinions that are going to come forward there, and how you can stand in the love and the truth of who you are, regardless of what people are doing with that, right? So, and this reminds me of Mel Robbins' "let them" theory. Just let them have their opinions, right? And so that is very true. And so here are some pieces as to that may help you, though, to allow them to let them, because in order to let them with something that's so personal to us, that feels like this is a part of a core truth of who I am and it's being rejected, that can be more challenging to navigate. Okay. So, what we're doing when we allow someone's opinion to bother us is because a part of us is fearing that now that we're being rejected, that way that we're being rejected is evidence that we are somehow flawed, unlovable, not enough. And that's why, again, with this whole podcast, I want to remind you that there's nothing broken within you. And we're all on this journey. So, but that rejection is that, man, that slap in the face, the pulling on your heartstrings that reminds you of stories from all the way back to childhood in ways you were rejected, that pulls on these ways of that sense of your ego saying, yeah, you're just not lovable. You're not lovable for who you are. And so the whole point is that we have this pull from love to keep showing all aspects of ourselves, despite what others have done or will do with that, so that we anchor in the wholeness of who we are, our lovability, our enoughness, and the knowingness to all of ourselves. And so in clinical psychology, we talk about parts theory and how these different parts of us get shoved aside. They get pushed aside. We don't accept them. We don't bring them into ourselves fully. And so you just doing this work to say, no, this is who I am, is huge because you're receiving a part of yourself where others have said, well, that's shameful, that's wrong, or what have you. And you are bringing it back into yourself with love. And the way we anchor it in fully, because we can see it and we can know that about ourselves, but we could still be kind of walking on eggshells because we want to experience love from others. It's natural in our human experience to want to experience love. And isn't it better just to hide this part of me away? Let's not talk about it. Let it not be really a thing. Let's just continue to ignore this aspect and all get along. But what is that doing to you? That's cutting off a part of your own divinity, because the divine in you and all its nooks and crannies wants to be lovingly expressed. And we all want to be honored for who we truly are. So I'm going to share a little bit about my story, how I navigated this with plenty of human experiences. So many of you know, but I'll try to be brief with this. I grew up Catholic and was very close to Jesus growing up, felt this close connection as a young child, and loved going to church, went through and became a Eucharistic minister and went to all the holy days. I mean, I was into it all through college and so forth. Had my husband become Catholic so that we could get married. And then I was introduced to a more open spiritual realm. This is where I've shared before. I went to a shaman, and this was really one of my big awakenings spiritually, because I felt seen and loved in a way that I couldn't explain. And the whole point of our relationship to the divine, I believe, is that we get closer and closer to wanting to know the divine within us. And so I could not ignore this whole spiritual side that started opening up for me. I started meditating. I was using crystals, flower essences, and I began studying all the different major religions. I was actually doing some of that beforehand. I always had an interest in Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, but now I was just going into the full spectrum, right? And I remember sharing something. I don't even remember what it was, with a family member. And this is when I got the first slap of reality of, you're the devil. You are the devil. Like, can you imagine hearing that? And probably you have, because you've been shamed in some way for who you are. And of course, this cut me to the core, because everything that I was doing was bringing me, I could feel in my relationships, uh, and in my relationship with the divine, when I would meditate for like over an hour and just feel this connection. And it was so powerful. And I was so hurtful that this was misunderstood. So then it was like, okay, I'm going to go about doing my thing, but I am going to not share this part of who I am with family or with many people. Now, in the meantime, we belonged to a church because I wanted my kids to have some anchoring into spirituality. And I felt that where I was with exploring spirituality wasn't enough of an anchor. And again, because of my love and my close connection with Jesus as a child, that felt like a place that I wanted my kids to experience. And I was choosy. I wanted a place where they didn't, overly talk about sin and all these pieces that I didn't believe in anymore. Right. But my kids went to church and I didn't. I would show up at church when they were in like Christmas plays or whatever. And, so as long as, really, since my kids were young, and this really went against my vision for what I thought, what I would have in my marriage and how I would raise my family. Like I thought we were going to be the Catholic family that brought their kids to church every week and all the holy days. And so that in and of itself was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that my life is not being lived out that way. But I would send the family to church and I would have these deep and juicy and powerful meditations and also a deepening exploration of the divine feminine that I thought has been pushed aside in traditional religions. And I was hurt by that in the beginning as well. And so and so I didn't go to church. And so there was judgment about that. There would literally be people who would go up to my husband and say, "Oh, is your wife sleeping in again?" Like that I was just lazy, didn't want to go to church, right? And meanwhile, I I devote myself to the divine at least an hour a day and always had a deep relationship. I really feel like all I do is that connection with the divine. And yet here I was being misunderstood, even though I was trying to keep this aspect of myself more to myself. People were going to have their own reactions to that because I could no longer buy into or be something pretend to be something that I wasn't, but I also was closing in who I really was. And so, again, whether we show someone who we are or we don't, people are going to have their judgments. They're going to have their misperceptions, misunderstandings, and this is all part of the journey. So, as my kids went to church, there was never this issue of you don't have to go to church because mom's not going to church because they literally saw me meditate each day for an hour. So I always said, yeah, you don't have to go to church as long as you can, let's give it 30 days. If you meditate with me for an hour for 30 days every day, you don't have to go to church either. And of course, I don't think they made it more than 10 minutes. So church it was once a week. And that has been their journey. But they grew up, of course, with me bringing in the divine feminine aspects, and this certainly came forward as I was called by Mary Magdalene to step into the priestess path. And so the priestess path for me has really been an awakening of what the divine feminine is within me. I did not understand the power and the beauty within the divine feminine before I went on a priestess journey. And so being able to go through this process is it creates within you a divine marriage between the divine feminine and the divine masculine, between heaven and earth, between our humanity and our divinity. And so I needed to go on a deepening process with that. That was not taught to me. And so the next part in my journey was there's a new minister. And this minister feels more humble and has had his own struggles in his relationship to God and what that has looked like for him. He grew up with an evangelical background, grew up with an evangelical father who was a minister, and that was supposed to be his trajectory in life, that he was going to be this evangelical minister, and then started questioning some of those beliefs. And he took time off from the ministry and then somehow found himself in our little church. And our church really is little. It's, I don't know, I think it's under 200 people. But there was something about him, perhaps because of this journey of his, where he was not coming at me or the congregation saying, I know the answers, I know the way. And because of that, he would invite people to have coffee to get to know them, especially in the beginning. And I don't think this was our first meeting, but maybe the second or third meeting, I share with him my priestess journey. And he did not fully understand it, but he held it. He held it as a possibility of an expression of the divine, and that there was nothing wrong with this expression of the divine. And let me tell you, after being literally called the devil, this in and of itself was very healing, because we have a person of authority in the church holding that here's a woman who honors the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and that this is my expression, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that was super healing. So then I start getting the calling to speak about this to the church. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Right. So maybe you've had that calling of like, okay, and next step is, and you're like, no, I'm not doing that. So I fought this for 2 years. So I'm telling you, when I say we are perfectly divine, it's from our imperfections of our humanity that lead us to our perfection of remembering. It took me 2 years to listen. I usually feel like I'm a good listener to the divine working through me, but I was like, I'm not doing this. So it took me 2 years, and I finally did it. And I went to the minister and said, look, I think I'm being called to start some sort of group exploring the divine feminine. And so that happened this past fall. I had maybe 10 women. It started off as women show up at my house. And I went really deep into my priestess journey, probably a little too deep for where people are at. And, in a church setting, I definitely scared some people. There were people who said, yeah, I could never believe that, or not that I was asking them to believe what I was believing, but it was just more of an exploration. And they were just like, no, I can't do that. And it's totally cool. But it was very evident that I scared them. They were kind of like running to get out of the house, right? And so what was interesting was I presented this to the church. There was some kind of back and forth because people were coming to me. They're like, well, I don't believe God is a woman. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not really saying that either. I don't think the divine, is male or female, but this divine feminine aspect is important. So there was a core group of us that were very into this and was really looking for a way, how can we hold this? Oh, and I will backtrack a little bit, because this all happened. We were doing a dinner party with some people from church, and this woman was watching The Chosen, and she was so excited of how they included women in the story in The Chosen, and especially about Mary Magdalene being a prostitute. And I am like biting my tongue. And she's literally right next to me. And she's like, Michelle, she's like, I can tell you want me to shut up about The Chosen. And I'm like, no, it's not that. It's I have deep sorrow that you look at Mary Magdalene as a prostitute, because that has been a myth that has been passed down. There is nowhere to be for that to be true in the sacred texts. And so she was super gung ho, and me being willing to share my truth in that moment got her wheels kind of turning. And she's like, well, what does Michelle know about Mary Magdalene that I don't? And she started her own journey. Now, this is a person who reads the Bible every day. She is very involved in the church. And so I thought me sharing my truth would be problematic. And lo and behold, she has become one of the greatest allies to this group. So this group is now called the Study of Ancient Texts. And what we are doing, we are looking at the texts from that the ancient texts that were buried from the Nag Hammadi, other buried texts that were found in Egypt in the late 19th century. And we're saying these are pretty much written around the same time as the New Testament. Let's delve into some of the aspects of these other Christians that weren't allowed in, that were not considered part, that became part of the Bible, because Rome in the fourth century decided, okay, we'll stop killing Christians and we will take in Christianity. But of course, Rome is going to take in Christianity based on what it can do, and that will still control people, right? And so Yeshua, or Jesus, his message, which was so inclusive, which was so expansive to include women, Rome couldn't handle that. That would not fit with Roman law. So we're getting a version of Christianity that has been, first of all, there's been different iterations from it as these texts have been passed down and translated from different languages to different languages. We're also getting what was considered palpable for ancient Rome to be able to tolerate as part of Christianity. So we do these studies of ancient texts, and in them is the divine feminine. And this group, it started off as women. We decided to be inclusive of men because that's the whole point, is that this is supposed to be an inclusive experience. And it is so powerful what is happening for women in particular, because they feel so seen and connected to the divine in a way that is, I can't put words to it. It's so beautiful. And the men there, interestingly, they're not as active as the women, but I feel them as these like loving anchors. They're like, we're holding this space. We believe that the power of this, and we're holding this space. And so one of the men is my husband, the other is the minister. There's been past ministers that have joined. And so there is a beauty to whether people are interacting or not, that they're holding, that this matters. Even though there are some people in my church that judge it as wrong or what have you. And when I speak to it, I say, we've got the Bible, and that's like the primary colors that we've been given. And this is like the box of 64 crayons, right? That give us more color, more variation to our understanding of the divine. And so I share this with you because we all go through these journeys of coming out and being misunderstood. And people just aren't familiar sometimes with your source of spirituality or your sexuality or your political understandings, right? And so they're going to go to what they know and what is comfortable for them and what they've been told is right or wrong, right? And so the more we can allow ourselves this place of inching into coming out as more and more of your true self, the more what it does for you, despite these judgments, despite non-acceptance, is anchor you in to the holy love that you are. And that is something that the more anchored in it becomes, no one can take that from you. And that scares people because you are in your divine power. So we are called to face our deepest fears. Now, I don't want you to do this if your expression of self puts you in physical harm, which I know is a reality for some people. But I feel that we are called to face our deepest fears of what others will do with who we truly are. because what we're facing are the old beliefs that tell us of what all the reasons why we're unlovable. And that gets mirrored back to us from others' non acceptance. And we get to decide, how do I choose to love when I'm misunderstood? So for me, this has been a journey from being pissed off, angry, defensive, how dare they, blaming them, judging them right back. You're so close-minded, right? And that's fine. Our humanness, we get to have our human reactions. We get to be defensive when we're hurt. It's like back off, right? And then we sit in that space until that power within us, that love within us that says, okay, and it's time to grow through that crack. And it's time to expand who we are and allow that to be seen. And so that in that process, the judgment that I've had back towards others begins to soften. I begin to see their fears. And then ultimately, it comes to finding within your heart how exactly you are similar with those who disagree with you. Now, I've heard this before. I don't know. It takes some inner doing to get there. That's all I'll say. I mean, we've got our just human ways of kind of protecting ourselves. So, what got me there with others who judged me about my spirituality is I know for them and for me that yearning to be as close as to the divine as humanly possible. And for them, it comes with a certain set of rules that's important for them to follow. And for me, it's listening to my heart and following the divine guidance within me. So theirs may be an external like book of rules and mine is an internal guidance system. But either way, we yearn to experience the divine within us and have that closeness with the divine. And that I cannot fault them for. It reminds me of when you're a parent. Some of you may be a parent, some of you may not. You so want to get it right? You just want to get it right because you love your kids so much. And we all know there's some things we get wrong. We just get it wrong, even though we tried, because we're facing our own human circumstances, our own reality, our own limitations of knowing ourselves at that time. And we're not going to get it right all the time. And that is when, despite our deep love for our children, and we get it wrong, we learn the miracle and gift of compassion, mercy, forgiveness, because we know our intention was love, and we know we are willing to grow and do better and learn from it so that we can be more of an expression of the divine. So this really is the opportunity to see one another despite the differences humanity creates, right? See one another despite the differences humanity creates, not the divine. The divine creates differences within us, but not from a place of judgment. And when we understand that and recognize that and work with that, we are able to see the essence of another's divinity. In my group, which is now called the Study of Ancient Texts, we were just reading Sophia of Jesus Christ. And in there is how the divine feminine has put a drop of the divine within each of us. It is there for in every person, regardless of what we do, what we don't do, how much we get it wrong, how much we quote unquote get it right. And this is when judgments you hold towards yourself and others start to dissolve because you are able to recognize the drop of the divinity within you and with others. Here I am getting all worked up that I'm being judged for my different spiritual beliefs, for a priestess, being a priestess, for loving the divine feminine, the expressions of the goddess. And I used to judge atheists. I'm like, how can you go through life and not want to be connected to the divine? And so here it was. It was a mirroring back of ways that this judgment that I think I'm being judged, for me to see my own judgments towards others. And when I really took a step back, even though I have such a deep love and appreciation for the divine, the truth was every atheist I knew was so freaking loving. So they may not believe in God, but the ones I have experienced, know love. And that's what this is all about. So I don't care what religion or non religion, spirituality or non spirituality, the whole point is love. And when we can remember that within one another, then we can expand into a deeper and deeper and deeper love within us that we didn't know was possible. This group that I was so scared to create, that I did not want to share with a Christian church, because Christianity, back in the Christians were killed for their beliefs, and then people who believed in the goddess or the divine feminine were then killed for theirs. And so the when we're not doing this work, the spiral of pain and hurt and judgment and fear just continues to deepen. And so the beauty is that when you listen to the callings and hear those places of growth, and the divine will be patient with you. If the divine was patient with me for 2 years, the divine will be patient with you. But something beautiful is waiting on the other side of that fear. And so, yes, there's been judgment, but let me tell you, the closeness, the connection, the beauty, the love that is felt in this group, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for the safety that I felt and continuing to hide an aspect of me that's so important to me. And so I encourage you, wherever you are in your path, to deepen your knowingness of the love that you are. And any judgments that come towards you, not only let them, but let them be the experience that helps remind you to see the love, similarity within that other, and to see if there's areas where you too are judging, because those veils are part of our human experience. And the more we have the willingness and courage to see through them, which are often given in the ways that we feel rejected or that we have rejected others, then we those veils diminish and diminish. And the more love and expansiveness you are anchored into within your human self, so that you can be heaven on earth. That's why we're all here. So thank you for allowing me to share this story with you, that I trust you with it. And even if there's those that don't agree with it, don't like it, that's all right. Because it's all part of our journey. It's all part of our journey to allowing the mind to do what it's going to do. And eventually it works its way through us so that our heart can meet with our mind to find resolution and deeper understanding and love. So continue to put yourself forward despite rejection, and being able to continue to listen to that inexplicable force that is within you. It's a love that keeps you going despite life's hurt and tragedies. Allow that force to work through you in miraculous ways and know that there is nothing wrong about you, nothing broken. It's just a process of remembering and loving all that we are. Until next time, please take care.
I am so honored you have joined me today. If you enjoyed the I'm Perfectly Divine podcast, subscribe so you don't miss any of our power-filled episodes. Also, if you know another who is strong, sensitive, and spiritual and wants to dive deeper into emotions and ancient wisdom so they too can create profound peace and fulfillment from within, please share this podcast. Thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to reconnecting with you soon.